What up, YouTube? This is Steven, and I want to talk with you guys about the Clock Tower adventure novel. Technically, there's two novels, but I've only read one, which is Helen's story. I have not been able to locate Jennifer's story. So basically, in this video, I'm going to be talking pretty much strictly about Helen's um, adventure novel story. But of course, I'll be mentioning Jennifer as well because she's definitely an important part of the story. You know, she's pretty much the protagonist. You could argue that there's two protagonists, but ultimately, if we had to choose one, which usually in stories there's just one protagonist, it would be Jennifer. But I looked on the internet and I couldn't find Jennifer's story, and I wanted to read hers first, but I couldn't find the story. So I read Helen's. And, you know, I was really, 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 really impressed with the story. I was, very entertained with the story. It really added a lot of insight and a lot more, detail to the Clock Tower story. Because, going into this story, I didn't really have any expectations. Reading the novel, Helen's story, Helen's part, I didn't have any expectations going in. You know, I pretty much just thought that it was going to be pretty much just like going through the video game. And there are similarities between the video game and the book, of course, but I will say that the video game is sort of like the movie version of a book, if you get what I'm saying. You know how when they make movies of books, like a lot of details are left out. So it's kind of like that. So consider the video game version to be kind of like the movie version of Clock Tower. Clock Tower. um, and FYI, just in case you don't know, there's going to be some spoilers. So if you haven't read it and you want to be surprised, this probably isn't the video for you yet, So you should probably go and read the story first and come back. However, some people may not want to read the story because some people aren't like really into reading. So what I'm going to do is try to give like a summary of all like the interesting parts, as well as give a review and give, a little analysis as well, paying it forward to the Clock Tower community, the Clock Tower fans. All right, so the story pretty much kind of begins sort of like the video game. You're kind of like, it's a little different. The story kind of begins with, Helen and her coworkers looking at slides of the Clock Tower murder victims. And they were going through the slides, and the slides referenced the Clock Tower murders that Jennifer was almost a victim of. So like her friends. So how you have like Anne tied up in the shower, and then you have like the others, Lot or maybe Lottie, her murder scene, and then you have Laura's murder scene as well. Although in this story, in this translation, they call Laura Rolla for some reason. I don't know why. And also, sidebar, I just want to give a quick shout out to the website called Scenery Recall for posting this translation and possibly doing the translation. So I just want to thank them for that. All right, so back to the story. So it kind of starts off with it's pretty much just going through and reviewing the previous Clock Tower murders, right? And in the movie, well, in the video game, they didn't really do that. In the video game, it started off with like a hypnosis session between Jennifer and Professor Barton. So I thought that was interesting that they are referencing this the previous cases like right off the bat, because like in the video game they didn't reference the previous cases at all, really. And I thought that was a little, well, a little strange, but I guess they didn't really want to go into that and just keep it strictly like a sequel, you know. um, so in this, you know, during the first part, you know, they're giving some, you know, character development to Helen, and you know, Helen, she's seeing these clips, and for her, it's a bit difficult. Some people can, you know, look at these like murder photos and eat, but Helen cannot. She's not one of those people. Um, let's see, what else? You know, then at one point, Helen hears, you know, Jennifer's voice coming from Professor Barton's room, and you know, she's screaming, "Scissorman, Scissorman!" And she goes in to help Jennifer. And you know, in the movie, well, I keep on saying movie, but in the video game, Professor Barton's character, it isn't really developed, although you can see where it's headed, you know, as far as kind of like his indifference is concerned in regards to Jennifer's well-being, and considering her like strictly a test subject and not seeing her as a human being, you know, etc. In the book, they really elaborate more so on Professor Barton's character, you know, and how, you know, impassive and callous he really is. And also in the story, they go on to mention that like Helen and Professor Barton had pretty much like a one night stand, you know, a fling that Helen really regrets doing. And, you know, people in the office know about it, although they call it like an open secret, but everyone knows about it. Um, and that's because Professor Barton told everyone about it. So yeah, I guess, you know, Professor Barton isn't really like the person with the best character, you know? So, all right. So let me speed this up. All right. So we're kind of like, all right, we're doing that whole character development thing before, like, you know, the first scenario begins, right? So they sort of, one thing that was changed that I'm going to mention is that I think Helen and Jennifer live on campus at the university instead of off campus at their home. In the video game, they live off campus. They live like in a totally different area than the university. But I thought that's a little strange. They're living in the university. um, so yeah, let's jump into the first scenario, the first encounter with Scissorman from Helen's point of view. All right, so Helen, you know, it kind of starts off as usual. As far as the video game is concerned, like Helen is taking a nap in like that room or whatever, where you know, the workers or the professors rest at, and you still have Rose and that other dude. So it's like a regular scenario, right? So then you get the knock at the door, and you see that it is, you know, Rose's kind of like boyfriend or whatever. And you're like, okay, nothing of it. So you open the door, and this is all at night as well. Open the door, and then all of a sudden, like the head falls off of like a stick. And then you see Scissorman coming in, and Helen is scared for her life because she's never had an encounter with Scissorman before. And she kind of like was frozen for a minute and didn't even know what to do. But she thinks quickly, and she grabs a blanket and then throws it between his scissors to sort of snare the scissors and kind of like stop him up. And then she runs past him. Then in this scenario, they don't really go into details about like Helen getting like a flashlight or anything like that. Which, you know, if you play the video game, the flashlight is very important to get the best ending. But they didn't really say that Helen got the flashlight. Just putting it out there. However, Helen is running away from Scissorman. Then she goes into that, goes into like the security office room. Then she calls the police, and you know, she's talking to them and saying, you know, Scissorman is trying to kill me, and they're on the you can kind of hear some whispers or some people's voices in like another Scissorman, you know, hoax, because people have been reporting this like for a while, kind of doing like pranks and stuff involving Scissorman. So the police were a little reluctant to come out. I think she wound up speaking with Gotts on the other line as well, assisted Inspector Gotts. And he said they was going to come out or something like that. Maybe, but I think before that happened, the line was cut just suddenly. Like she was talking in a snip, no dial tone. So like, uh-oh. And then Helen's thinking in her mind, oh, Scissorman's up to something. Like, he knows what I'm doing, you know? Then in that same room, she hears the like drip, drip, drip. You know, like if you play the video game, you go into that security room, you hear the drip, drip, drip. And she's wondering, like, okay, it's just water. Then she goes behind like this area, and then she sees like this guy hanging on like, I think pretty much like a coat hook or something, and he's been killed. Then all of a sudden, Scissorman pops out, bam. Then she goes running, 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 running. Then she runs into the storage room. And if you play the video game, the storage room in Helen's scenario is where you escape. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, she wound up grabbing some keys that were on the desk before she left. All right, so she's in the storage room, and she remembers that in the storage room, there is a door that leads out into the parking lot. If she can get out in the parking lot, she's good. She's safe, you know. And she's trying all the keys on his key ring, you know, on the key ring. And, you know, she's trying. Then all of a sudden, Scissorman comes in, and she's still trying. She's still going through it and panicking. Finally, she finds the right key. Bam, she's out. And she's running, and then the police are showing up. And that's pretty much the end of scenario 1. You know. So yeah, it's pretty much kind of plays out more or less the same at that particular portion of the story, but a little different. Oh yeah, that guy's name was Baker that Rose was with. It was like Rose and Baker. I said Brian, but yeah, Rose and Baker. So yeah, after that scenario, she goes down to the police station and gives her story, and she's talking with Gotts as well. And I think she knows who Gotts is. Yeah, she knows who Gotts is. I think they've had previous encounters. And one thing I will mention is that the relationship between Helen and Gotts in the book is different from the relationship they had in the video game. In the video game, they seem really, really friendly. In the book, they don't seem to be as friendly, and they seem to be a little combative. They have, like, you know, little back and forth with each other. I found that a little surprising. I was a little, you know, slightly disappointed by that, because I did like the relationship that they had with each other. I thought it was a you know, a very sweet relationship, very nice relationship. But I will say that ultimately their relationship, Helen does view Gotts as sort of like a safe place for her. I think in the story, Helen is probably her most vulnerable when she is with Gotts, like especially after she's had like encounters with Scissorman, like, you know, she kind of like throws herself into like Gotts' arms, and, you know, kind of like goes a little crazy for a minute, and then even at one point fainted in his arms because she was so overwhelmed with everything. So yeah, ultimately I think the relationship in the story, while different and a little strained in comparison with the video game, I think ultimately their relationship is a good relationship. You know, they're there when they need each other. You know. Okay, so, you know, after that, you know, they're doing a whole bunch of questioning at the police station, and then let's see. Some points before that, Helen meets Kay and Edward. And Edward is another survivor from the Clock Tower murders. Although Jennifer says that she doesn't remember seeing him there, which when I was playing the video game, I was wondering about that. I was like, but Jennifer wouldn't know about the murders in the Clock Tower case. The people who were murdered. Like, she didn't see Edward there, you know? Of course, we all know who Edward is, but, you know, I found that a little strange that that never came up in the game. Like, oh, why doesn't Jennifer recognize Edward, you know? And Edward conveniently lost his memory, and he was given the name Edward, so no one really knows his real name. And Jennifer doesn't remember seeing him there, so, you know, it's not like really he can say anything since he conveniently lost his memory, you know. But apparently he was the one of the other survivors. We thought there was one, Jennifer, but there's actually two, Jennifer and Edward, as survivors. Okay, so let's see, where are we at now? All right, so I guess second scenario are in between the first and second scenario. So kind of like they get to the point where they're like, okay, is Scissorman real or not? Like, is he the authentic Scissorman, or is he like somebody, you know, imitating him? And they want to do some research. And I think while doing research, they wind up, you know, coming across some information regarding the devil statue, or sometimes it's called the demon idol. And in this story, it's called the evil idol. But yeah, they wind up coming across that in like a photograph or something. And for some reason they want it. I don't remember why. Of course, it's a very important part, you know, to this whole situation, of course. But I forgot the reason that they came to by they want it. But I guess they feel like that has a clue to what's happening in these clock tower cases, our murders. So at this point in the story can kind of go either way in the book. It's set up to go like one of two paths, and in this story, you can ask Gots to go to the house of Rick's house, who used to be the butler for the Burrows, or you can go to the library yourself and get, you know, whatever you need, the information that you need. So you can either go to Rick's house to get the information about the statue, or you can go to the library and get the information about the statue and, you know, the family, the Burrows family.